How psychologists quiet gossip instantly. Without offending anyone, there's a strange and subtle force that defines the texture of our social lives. It weaves itself into casual conversations, whispers in office corners, echoes through group chats, and hides behind phrases like "just between us" or "don't tell anyone I said this." We rarely talk about it directly, yet it shapes reputations, influences decisions, and builds or breaks trust. That force is gossip, and while it may seem like a trivial or even harmless habit, it carries profound philosophical weight. Gossip is not just talk, it's the social currency of insecurity, projection, and the illusion of control. So when we ask how psychologists quiet gossip instantly without offending anyone, we're not merely asking about technique. We're asking a much deeper question: how do we interrupt a behavior that is both emotionally addictive and culturally normalized without becoming enemies in the process? To understand how this works, we have to go far back to the evolutionary and existential roots of why gossip exists in the first place. Our ancestors lived in tight-knit groups where survival depended on cooperation. Knowing who could be trusted, who had betrayed someone, who broke the rules. This information wasn't just juicy, it was essential. Gossip was a form of social regulation. It helped enforce norms, punish defectors, and strengthen in-group loyalty. But here's the philosophical twist. What began as a tool for survival evolved into a tool for ego. In modern society, where our physical survival doesn't depend on tribe cohesion in the same immediate way, gossip often becomes a way to manage anxiety, to momentarily elevate ourselves by lowering someone else, or to feel part of something when we feel isolated within. So now we find ourselves at an intersection. On one hand, gossip is deeply human. On the other, it's deeply corrosive. Psychologists who know how to stop gossip instantly without offending anyone aren't just masters of communication, they're masters of compassionate interruption. They understand that gossip is rarely about the person being talked about. It's about the emotional state of the person doing the talking. And so, the most powerful way to stop gossip is not to confront it with judgment, but to transform the energy of the conversation. That takes insight, timing, and strategy.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Watch closely how this works. When someone starts gossiping, your natural instinct might be to go along, to nod, to listen politely, to avoid conflict. But in that moment, you have an opportunity. Not to shame, not to scold, but to redirect. One of the most effective psychological techniques is what's known as empathetic disruption. You look at the speaker, and instead of saying, "Hey, don't gossip," you say something like, "That's interesting, what do you think is really going on with them?" Or, "I've always wondered what made them act that way." It sounds simple, but it does something radical. It shifts the focus from mocking or blaming to understanding. And when you move a conversation into the realm of empathy, gossip dies. Not because you killed it, but because it can't survive in that emotional climate. Let's go deeper. What do we become when we engage in gossip? We become judges, spectators, critics. We put someone else's life on trial without their presence, often unaware that we're projecting our own unresolved issues onto them. But when a psychologist intervenes, they don't attack the gossip, they dissolve it. They understand that if you attack gossip directly, people get defensive. They feel exposed. But if you ask a deeper question, one that invites reflection, they often pause. That pause is everything. It interrupts the script. It creates space for a different kind of awareness. Now let's ask a hard question. Why do you listen to gossip? Not why others gossip, but why you listen. Is it curiosity? Is it boredom? Is it a subtle sense of superiority? If we're honest, the answer often lies in our own emotional needs. Psychologists who diffuse gossip without offense have done one thing first. They've confronted those needs within themselves. They've asked, why do I want to hear this? What does this give me? And in recognizing the answer, they've disarmed the hook. That's why they don't get pulled in, not because they're morally superior, but because they've outgrown the need to consume other people's flaws in order to feel whole. This is where the philosophy becomes practical. Every time you choose not to participate in gossip, you're not just protecting someone else, you're refining your own character. You're saying, I don't need to feed on this. And when you gently guide others out of the habit, you're doing something even more powerful. You're creating a new standard. You're becoming a quiet leader, not the kind who commands attention, but the kind who changes the emotional temperature of a room just by choosing depth over drama. And the beautiful irony? When you become the person who never gossips, who redirects conversations with grace and curiosity, people begin to trust you more. They feel safe with you. They start to speak more honestly, more vulnerably. Because deep down, we all want to be in spaces where we don't have to wear armor. We want to know that if we're not perfect, and none of us are, we won't be dissected behind our backs. So when you offer that kind of space to others, without preaching or policing, you become a rare kind of presence, a quiet force, a philosophical disruptor. And that's just the beginning. The mirror of the tongue, why what we say about others reveals who we are. There is a hidden mirror in every conversation we have, a mirror not of glass, but of language. And every time we speak about someone else, especially when they are not present, we are not just painting a portrait of them, we are unconsciously revealing ourselves. This is the philosophical heartbeat of gossip. It masquerades as commentary on others, but it is, in truth, a reflection of the speaker's inner world. Psychologists who understand this don't just stop gossip, they decode it. They listen to the subtext, the emotional residue behind the words, and they ask a question few dare to consider. What is this person really saying about themselves when they talk about someone else? Let's slow that down. When someone says, "Can you believe she wore that to the meeting?" They're not just critiquing a fashion choice, they're revealing something about their own values, insecurities, or social anxieties. When someone whispers, "He's so full of himself," they might be expressing resentment toward confidence they wish they had. Gossip is rarely about facts, it's about frustrations. And those frustrations, left unexamined, become projections. The philosopher Carl Jung coined the term shadow to describe the parts of ourselves we deny or repress. Gossip is often a conversation between one person's shadow and another's absence. This is why psychologists don't fight gossip with confrontation. They understand that gossip is an emotional signal, not just a social behavior. It signals loneliness, envy, fear, or the need for connection. So instead of saying, "Don't talk about her like that," they might ask, "Do you feel like she gets more recognition than you? Or have you talked to him about how you feel?" These questions don't shame, they reveal. And in revealing, they offer the speaker a rare opportunity to see the reflection in the mirror of their own words. It's easy to think that gossip is harmless, or that it's simply venting. But words shape perception. Every time we speak about someone, we alter the way others see them and the way we see ourselves. Gossip, then, becomes a kind of spellcasting. It conjures a version of reality that might not be true, but becomes socially real through repetition. And here's the deeper danger: when we habitually speak ill of others, we slowly chip away at our own ability to trust, to connect, to feel safe in relationships. Why? Because we begin to assume that everyone else is doing the same to us. The world becomes a hall of mirrors, filled with hidden knives. So let me ask you something unsettling. What would your life look like if every word you spoke about someone else was also spoken about you? Would you still say it? Would you still think it in the same way? This question isn't meant to induce guilt, it's meant to wake us up. Because in the act of gossip, we often lose sight of the sacredness of speech. We forget that language is not just a tool, it's a trust. And when we misuse that trust, we dilute our own integrity. Psychologists who silence gossip effectively don't do it by silencing people, they do it by elevating the conversation. They introduce nuance. They ask philosophical questions. What do you think led them to act that way? Have you ever felt misunderstood like that? These questions don't defend the absent person, they defend depth. They create a space where gossip can't breathe because the air is too rich with introspection. And in that space, something incredible happens. The speaker, if they are willing, begins to see themselves more clearly. This isn't about moral superiority. It's about emotional maturity. We all fall into gossip sometimes, we're human. But what defines us isn't whether we've slipped into it. It's whether we notice, pause, and redirect. Whether we use the gossip as a doorway into a deeper reflection, or whether we let it become a habit that shapes our soul. In a world addicted to surface-level commentary, choosing to speak with integrity becomes a revolutionary act. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's transformative. Because when people begin to associate your presence with safety, kindness, and thoughtful speech, they change not because you told them to, but because they want to meet you at the level you've chosen to live. So the next time you hear gossip, remember, it's not about the person being talked about. It's about the speaker's internal landscape. And maybe, just maybe, it's a chance not to judge them, but to invite them into a conversation where truth matters more than entertainment, where empathy replaces mockery, and where words become bridges instead of weapons. The alchemy of silence. How saying nothing can speak louder than any word. There is a wisdom so ancient and yet so underused in the modern world that it almost seems mystical. The power of silence. Not the awkward silence of social discomfort, nor the passive silence of fear, but the intentional, dignified silence that chooses not to participate in the emotional economy of gossip. This kind of silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is not avoidance, it is alchemy. And psychologists who understand how to quiet gossip without offense often use silence not as a retreat, but as a mirror. They know that in certain moments, saying nothing at all says everything. Let's unpack this. We live in a culture that worships noise, constant commentary, reaction, opinion. We're trained to respond instantly, to fill every gap with input, to never let a moment go unspoken. But gossip thrives in this environment because it feeds on immediacy and impulsivity. It wants a reaction. It wants agreement. It wants your attention, your nod, your "oh my God, really?" And when you don't offer that, when you simply don't respond, you create a void. That void becomes uncomfortable for the speaker, not because you've judged them, but because you've refused to join the rhythm of the gossip. You've disrupted the momentum, and in that disruption, something profound occurs. Reflection. Think of this silence as a kind of philosophical aikido. Instead of opposing the energy of gossip head-on, you absorb it by not resisting and not participating. You become like a mirror that reflects the words back to the speaker without amplifying them. They see their own commentary hanging in the air, unreinforced, and often they begin to hear themselves differently. This isn't passive resistance, it's non-cooperation with the shallow. And psychologists know that sometimes the most powerful message is the one you don't deliver with words, but with presence. But silence, when used with intention, is not just a tool of resistance, it's a tool of revelation. It reveals what needs to be said and what doesn't. It reveals the emotional motives behind speech. It reveals your character. When someone gossips and you say nothing, no smirk, no reaction, no participation, they are forced to confront the echo of their own words. And in that echo, there's often a realization. Maybe this isn't the kind of conversation worth having. Your silence becomes a philosophical question that they must answer for themselves. This is why silence is such a sophisticated response. It doesn't trigger defensiveness. It doesn't escalate conflict. It simply withholds validation. And in a world where most people are unconsciously seeking validation, especially through gossip, this absence becomes a kind of invisible mirror. Your silence asks without asking, "Why are you saying this? What are you hoping to feel by telling me this? What does this reveal about how you see others and yourself?" But let's be honest, choosing silence requires strength. It's uncomfortable. It can feel isolating. It can make you seem too serious, too intense, or no fun. But here's the paradox. The people who respect you the most will be the ones who recognize your silence as a form of wisdom. They may not say it out loud, but they'll feel it. They'll know that you're someone who doesn't indulge in tearing others down just to feel momentarily bigger. And that quiet integrity will echo louder than any opinion ever could. Ask yourself, what would happen if the next time gossip floated into the room, you simply let it pass? Not with judgment, not with superiority, just with silence. Could you sit in that space without filling it? Could you allow the discomfort to be there without rushing to ease it with agreement or reaction? This is the practice, not just of stopping gossip, but of being the kind of person who no longer needs gossip to feel connected, validated, or entertained. Psychologists who use silence this way don't do it because they're disinterested. They do it because they are deeply attuned. They know that the most transformative influence doesn't always come from words, it comes from standards. And silence, used wisely, sets a standard that says, I'm here, I'm listening, but I won't participate in anything that poisons the room. That kind of silent standard changes people, not instantly, but subtly, slowly, permanently. So perhaps the next time you're tempted to speak, consider whether your silence might say more, and not just to others, but to you. Because silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of self. And when you honor that, you don't just quiet gossip, you elevate the entire conversation. The invisible revolution, how quiet people secretly shape the moral tone of the world. There is a quiet revolution happening all around us, and most people will never notice it. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't trend. It doesn't announce itself with fury or spectacle. Instead, it unfolds invisibly in small acts of restraint, subtle redirections, and the conscious refusal to engage in the easy cruelty of gossip. The people leading this revolution are not loud. They are not flamboyant. Often they are the ones listening more than they speak, observing more than they judge. And yet these are the individuals shaping the moral tone of every room they enter. They are the uncelebrated architects of trust, dignity, and depth. And psychologists who understand how to quiet gossip without offense are part of this silent uprising. What's most astonishing about this phenomenon is how unnoticed it is. While the world spins faster, louder, more reactive, these quiet people hold the line. They don't do it for applause. They don't need a spotlight. They simply choose again and again to be different. They choose to be the ones who won't tear someone down when they're not present. The ones who, when given the chance to join in judgment, instead offer curiosity, compassion, or silence. And this choice, repeated over time, creates a ripple effect that is far more powerful than we realize. Think about it, every social group has an unspoken moral center, a gravitational point that determines how far people can go in their behavior, their jokes, their gossip, without being corrected or redirected. Quiet people who embody integrity, who consistently refuse to participate in toxic talk, shift that center, without preaching, without confrontation, just by being. Their presence becomes a kind of ethical tuning fork, subtly recalibrating what's acceptable. And others, whether they admit it or not, adjust themselves accordingly. This is why the most powerful form of leadership is not positional, it's principled. And what makes it revolutionary is that it doesn't rely on force. It relies on example. When someone chooses not to laugh at a cruel joke, when they gently change the subject, when they speak about someone with grace even after being wrong, those actions are not small. They are radical, because they remind the people around them that another way is possible. That kindness isn't weakness. That depth isn't dull. That decency still exists. But let's be clear, this path isn't easy. It requires strength to hold your ground when others are bonding over mockery. It takes discernment to know when to speak up and when to remain silent. It demands self-awareness to recognize when gossip is pulling at your own insecurities. And it takes courage to be the one who doesn't laugh when everyone else does. That's why this revolution is invisible, because it happens in the unseen moments of decision, when no one is giving you credit and no one is watching closely, except maybe one person. And that one person might be changed forever by your choice. You might never realize the influence you've had. You might never hear someone say, because you didn't gossip, I realized I didn't have to either. But it happens. Quiet people give others permission to rise. They set a higher standard by simply living it. They restore conversations to their purpose, not as arenas for judgment, but as spaces for connection, exploration, and truth. And they do all of this without offense, without shame, without spectacle. So here's the final question. What if your greatest impact on the world isn't through what you say, but through what you refuse to say? What if your silence in the face of gossip is louder than any argument? What if your refusal to participate is the very thing that shifts a culture, even if no one ever names it? This is the power of quiet integrity. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't seek attention. But it moves through the world like an unseen current, gently pulling us back to what matters: respect, compassion, truth. And in the end, Maybe that's how we change the world, not by shouting over the noise, but by becoming the kind of presence that makes gossip irrelevant, cruelty uncomfortable, and kindness contagious. This is how psychologists quiet gossip instantly without offending anyone. And this is how quiet people lead a revolution.